Hi, my name is Paul Davis. Today we're going to be talking about firearm handling and firearm safety. Specifically, I want to go over the 4 fundamental rules for firearm handling. Before we start, I want to give you a bit of a background about myself. I am an 8-year veteran with a local police department here. I've been around firearms my entire life. I'm a Second Amendment supporter, and I've been trained in the use of these weapons from when I was a little child on. So let's get into it. To start off, rule number 1 is, well, before we do that, let me go over some of these weapons. The 4 rules I'm going to be talking about apply to any weapon, any firearm. It would apply to some of the older firearms, like your revolvers. This one here is a Colt Python in .357. This one here is a Colt 1911, much like the handguns that were used in World War II. And this here is more of a modern striker fire pistol that you would see on the market today. This here is a Walther PPQ, and it's in 9mm. Rule number 1, treat all firearms as if they are loaded. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you unload a firearm, don't be careless with it, even though you believe that it's unloaded. Sometimes you can unload a firearm and believe that it's unloaded, but you messed the order up, and therefore there may still be a round in that chamber. So if you follow rule number 1, treat all firearms as if they are loaded, then you'll never be careless with the firearm, and therefore you'll never have an accidental discharge. So let's start with this one. I'm gonna go over some techniques for unloading the firearm, and I'm also going to show you the improper way to unload the firearm. Now, for demonstration purposes, this is a loaded firearm. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate first the proper technique to unload this firearm. First, you're going to drop the magazine. Then, you're going to rack the slide. All right. After you've racked that slide, you lock it to the rear and you visually and physically inspect the chamber. Now I know this firearm is unloaded. Now I'm going to demonstrate the improper way to unload this firearm and how you may believe that it's unloaded when it actually isn't. First, we're going to load it. So again, we have a loaded firearm. What we're going to do is I'm going to demonstrate the improper way. So first, we know there is a bullet in the barrel. We're going to get rid of that bullet. Gone. Then we're going to drop the magazine. Now, somebody who is unloading this weapon in a hurry might have gotten those two reversed. And they might think that this is an unloaded firearm, when in fact, this firearm's still loaded. That's why you always want to treat it as if it's loaded, even when you believe that it's unloaded. Don't be careless. Rule number 2, never let the muzzle cover anything that you're not willing to destroy. What do I mean by that? Well, simply put, point the gun in a safe direction at all times. The muzzle being the end of the barrel, the end of the gun here. You don't want to be flagging on the range. You don't want to be pointing it at, at other shooters on the range. Also, you always want to carry it in a direction that that's going to be safe. Now, most people will tell you that you want to point the gun down at the ground, and under normal circumstances, that's a good method, pointing at the ground. You know where the bullet's going to stop. It's going to stop in the ground. However, what if you're in the top floor apartment of an apartment building? Is there a family that lives below you? You want to be aware of those things when you're handling your firearm. Now, there's another method where, and you often see this in Hollywood, where they will have the muzzle pointed upwards. Now, in this case, if the gun was to accidentally go off, the bullet's going to go in the air. What goes up must come down. Just like with the first example, you want to be aware of anything that may be above you. If you're climbing a set of stairs, if you are on the bottom floor of an apartment building and there's somebody living up above you, you want to be aware of how you're carrying this firearm. This is how, if I have my gun in my hand, if I have the firearm in my hand, this is how I would carry it if I was moving through a building, maybe to engage an active shooter or to investigate a noise I may have heard late at night in my house. I have the muzzle of the barrel canted slightly to the left, and that's to prevent, it's not pointed straight in front of me, and that's to prevent me from maybe pointing the muzzle at my feet or my ankles as I'm taking my steps. I might have a long stride. I may even be running at that point. So I always practice to carry it in this method as I'm moving through a building or outside, and I want that gun pointed at the ground. Now let's talk about holsters. If you're going to be a responsible citizen and carry, let's say that you have a carry conceal permit and you want to carry out in public, you want to have a good holster. Don't just tuck the gun down your pants, down the front of your pants, back of your pants, wherever. Now, there's the traditional leather holsters, and there's also the newer age Kydex holsters. Just be sure that you have a holster that's made of either good quality Kydex or good quality leather, and make sure that it covers the trigger guard so that trigger can't get snagged on anything and accidentally get pulled back. Okay, rule number 3. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target and you're ready to fire. What do I mean by that? Why is that important? Well, take the scenario we had earlier where the intruder comes inside your house. You have your gun, you're moving through your house to investigate. Well, if you tripped over something, there's an extreme likelihood that you could have an involuntary reflex and possibly pull that trigger and send a round off you don't want it to go. Now, an acceptable carry method is with your trigger finger along the slide, all right, and high up on the frame, just like this. Okay, now we're going to talk about rule number 4. Rule number 4, of your target and be aware of the backstop. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're on the range, that's easy. The target, most likely, is a piece of paper. The backstop is probably going to be a mound of dirt or sand, something to that effect. Now, if we go back to the home intruder scenario, let's say that it's at night and you hear a home intruder come into your house and you grab your defensive firearm and you go out into the hallway to investigate what it is. And when you step into the hallway, you see a figure. And what I mean by be sure of your target is if you were to take a shot at that figure and then turn on the light, not being sure that that's the intruder, you could have possibly just shot one of your family members who also stepped into the hallway to investigate what was going on. So that's what I mean by be sure of your target. Okay, just to recap. Rule number 1, treat all firearms as if they're loaded. Rule 2, never let the muzzle cover anything you're not willing to destroy. Point the gun in a safe direction. Rule 3, keep your finger off the trigger until you're on target and ready to fire. And rule 4, be sure of your target and be aware of the backstop. Hopefully, we have explained gun safety in a way that was easy to understand. As you can see, these rules are very practical for many different situations. If you treat firearms with respect and safely, you can never go wrong. Thank you. Take care.